Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming and attending our latest WiLSWorld shorts. As always, this is a series of short, bite-sized informational sessions on topical and relevant, topic. So I'm excited to be joined here today by Sue Maniloff from Omnigraphics and her colleague, Heather McDonough, who I think you might be able to see on the screen now, is going to be helping to sort of steer the ship today. We are overcoming adversity as we speak. So Sue is our presenter, but you won't be able to see her face today. She's having to dial in by phone because of some internet issues on her end. So Heather's going to be working the slides. Sue is going to be presenting us with all this great information, and I'm going to be quiet. So with that, I will gratefully turn things over to Sue and Heather to take it away.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for logging in to Unpacking New Diversity Titles. We are delighted to be here. Again, apologies for not being able to, for you to see my face on Zoom. We've had some severe storms in Southeast Michigan, which is where I am right now, and the internet's completely down. So Heather will be helping me drive the deck. And Heather, why don't we go ahead and kick it off and move to the slide that talks about, we're going to get right into some metrics here about diversity. And our first slide that we're going to kick it off with here is a study that was done in 2017 by the National Center for Education Statistics. And you'll see that 50% of the U.S. public elementary and secondary schools have more than a 50% minority enrollment. So I'm going to start this discussion today just by providing some background, sort of factual information, and then we'll move to the importance, of course, of the diversity audit and unpacking new diversity titles and providing a little bit of information on a few diversity titles that Omnigraphics has recently published. Heather, could you please move to slide number 3, where we are talking about a report that came out by the National Education Association. In 2014, it was the first year in which the majority of students in American public schools represented racial and ethnic minorities. So you can see there's a little bit of detail here that between 2000 and 2017, the percentage of public school students who were white decreased substantially from 61 to 48%, and the percentage of students who were Black decreased from 17 to 15%, with a substantial increase in Hispanic students going from 16 to 27% during the same period. I'm just going to take a quick breath here, and I do want to encourage everybody to ask questions along the way. This is, although this is a sort of formal WebEx, I'm very informal, and I welcome all and any interaction and questions. And again, I'm sorry that you can't see my face right now. Heather, could you please go to the next slide? And this slide here is really good information. This provides projection of race and ethnicity in the U.S. public school system through 2028. So you can see on the slide here that it's projected that there'll be a decrease of 7% by 2028 for students who are white, an increase in 1% for students who are Black, an increase in 8% for students who are Hispanic, a 20% increase by 2028 for Asian Pacific Islander students. And I found this last point to be really interesting and very relevant. A 51% increase in students who are 2 or more races, identify with 2 or more different minority groups. And, it's very interesting. This is intersectionality. It's a word that's becoming more and more prevalent. And I believe they only recently started grabbing this metric. I don't think in 2016 it was even a consideration, but as we move forward and we get deeper into this, and thankfully there's more visibility and focus around the need for understanding the diverse enrollment in public schools in this country, intersectionality, 2 or more races accounts for over a 50% increase by 2028. So I found that to be really important data. Heather, next slide, please. So recent studies show that books for children continue to feature predominantly white characters, although school populations are growing more diverse. Thankfully, we're starting to see a shift, which is great, and is published by several leading organizations serving libraries and educators, including the ALA. There's a big push in education to build diversity collections so that students can see themselves in the books they read. And thankfully, we are starting to see more and more diverse content come out for every reading level, including adult, including, nonfiction and poetry and, history and social sciences. And the more diverse content, the better. Next slide, please, Heather. So this is one of my favorite slides, and I'm sure that you can all relate to this. So young adults and teens today are not only getting the majority of their news online, but they're turning away from traditional media organizations to find out about current events. And they're turning towards social media and YouTube, and even worse, influencers and celebrities, social media influencers. And there's several polls that have come out confirming that by Common Sense, SurveyMonkey, and others. So educators and librarians can really, really help young adults and teens understand where they can get real, vetted, accurate, authoritative content. And they can help teach and educate about how teens and young adults, can tell opinion from fact and fact from fiction. And by the way, it's not only teens and young adults. I mean, the last few years and everything we've seen on the news without any, I'm not getting involved in politics in any way, shape, or form, but we've seen a whole lot of information, misinformation, nobody knows what's real. And, there's a responsibility, I really think, of educators and librarians to provide as much authoritative, factual, interesting, diverse content as we possibly can, incorporating nonfiction reference, diversity content into the classroom and into the library for patrons to help students figure out on their own, right, what it is that is real and what they want to tune into. Obviously, social media influencers is not where we want them to go. Next slide, please, Heather. So the need for historic perspective on discrimination and racial literacy has never been more important. There have been many different news events over the past few years that has escalated the need for a deeper understanding of racial literacy, and the focus of schools and libraries on providing diversity, fiction and nonfiction resources reflecting inclusion and cultural diversity has never been greater. So again, educators and librarians can help students understand and navigate the world by making diversity resources readily available. And there is more and more content being published, so more choices for bringing in more diversity content. Next slide, please, Heather. Pardon me. In a 2018 survey by the School Library Journal, 80% of school and public librarians said it's very important to develop a diverse book collection for children and teens. And keep in mind, this is 2018. This is pre-pandemic. This is pre some of the current affairs that have been happening that have brought in and escalated and highlighted the need for deeper racial literacy. So this is back in 2018, it was already 80%. So we can see that it's super important for libraries to have book collections with diverse points of view available for children and teens and adults as well. Next slide, please, Heather. So this was awesome. This came out in June of this year, so it's very current, and it's based on data, which is my favorite thing. Love data. Love, helps us all make better business decisions. A recent school library journal survey has confirmed everything we've all already known, right? So librarians are changing the criteria they use in order to weed current holdings and build out new collections. So they are in fact paying more attention to unconscious racial bias, inclusion, and diversity issues. Next slide, please. So this was a nice sort of bullet point list from the American Library Association to talk about different steps for representative reads for teachers and librarians. And it's information that we all sort of intuitively know, but I think it's kind of good to just, sort of gut check and remind ourselves. I mean, everybody's so caught up in so many things throughout the day that sometimes it's not a bad idea to sort of refocus and remember that it's really important to stay connected, interact on social media.
Uh-oh, I think we might have lost her. All right, I'll take it from here. So we just want everyone to know that how important it is to stay connected. The American Library Association just gives these different guidelines for you to help represent the different diverse students or community members within the libraries. One of the biggest challenges to discuss about race and racism in the classroom is that 80% of teachers are white. And so many of our white teachers are very uncomfortable about talking about race. Racial literacy requires teachers to engage in self-reflection about how they feel about diversity, their students of color, and those guidelines. So this chart shows us what the distribution of teachers in public and elementary secondary schools.
Hi guys, I'm back.
Are you back? Okay.
I'm back. So sorry. What slide are we on, please?
So I can step back to the 7 steps. So go ahead and review that.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Got booted off my internet here again. So the 7 steps. So staying connected and interacting on social media, starting a conversation. So have your team groups or your class discuss the definition of diversity. Create conversation starters. It's just really important. And some of these items within your conversation, may be sensitive, right? So you may need to moderate or help direct, but it's really important to get the conversation out there. Educate those around you, including parents, educators, library staff, making sure everybody has the right language and the right access to diversity content. Search the catalog, study your surroundings, consider how your regions and demographic is changing, right? So, and equally important, it's not only about your own demographic, but it's really about the demographic of the country. I mean, we all live in the United States, and it's not just about, for example, your own community. Maybe there's a strong Hispanic community where you are, but, maybe it's equally as important to understand, the indigenous culture, the African-American culture. There are so many different cultures to make sure that we are creating a deeper understanding and racial literacy around. Show your support And be sure to get involved, right? So there are many different resources available, which are growing, by the way, which is awesome. So Omnigraphics has actually published a few books now in our new diversity collection, and we are a reference publisher, and we always make sure to include a whole section on support groups with, you know, URLs, links, and contact phone numbers. And there are so many support organizations that continue to grow. It's really excellent. It's very helpful, and these are great resources. Okay, Heather, next slide, please. So here is a big challenge that's also quite sensitive. One of the biggest challenges to discussions around race and racism in the classroom is that approximately 80% of all teachers are white. And many white teachers are very uncomfortable talking about race. So, you know, it's an exercise in self-reflection, actually, because racial literacy really requires teachers to take a good look at themselves and have that talk with themselves around unconscious bias and, you know, their own feelings on race, diversity, and opportunities for students of color and from different, you know, maybe it's the LGBTQ+ community. So there are many different diverse groups that need to be included. And this is all about education and inclusion, really. So next slide, please, Heather, which is the diversity audit. And I'm going to take a pause for a minute while I have my phone connected and see if there are any questions, anything that I'm going pretty fast here. So I just want to take a pause. And Jeff, maybe you can ask the group if there's anything that anybody wants to send along as a question.
Sure. Yeah, everyone who's attending here in the live session, please do feel free to jump in. And of course, you can always put a question or comment into the chat box. If you, I think people could unmute themselves if you prefer to ask a question with your voice. I think that's okay as well. Right now,
yeah,
nothing
sure.
has come into chat though, Sue, just so you know.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, so let me know if something does, because of course I can't see the chat box, but you guys can certainly let me know what you see.
Will do.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to continue then with the diversity audit. So this is a very important section of this presentation. The diversity audit, you know, regardless of how well we think we're doing, we all have unconscious bias. And it's really important to take a good look and sort of like a gut check, you know, are we sure we're covering it off correctly? You know, conducting a diversity audit is a critical step in unpacking and building representative collections. And, you know, once you have the data of a diversity audit, the data speaks for itself. Next slide, please, Heather. So a diversity audit holds collections developers accountable. And it also encourages managers to fill in gaps and being more inclusive when building out collections. It's really a good sort of tool for accountability. And, you know, once you put some structure around it, it's like anything. If you put some structure around it, it provides, you know, focus. And, you know, you have things like deadlines and report outs, and all of a sudden you get a bit of a deeper look into what your diversity collection actually looks like. It's really an essential tool in developing insight and awareness, and it helps identify areas of weakness that need improvement. So the audit leads to understanding what types of new diversity resources need to be added. And the good news is that many times there is additional budget available for diversity content. We're finding this more and more where there are, you know, it could be in grant money, it could be an allocated fund from the library collections development team. specifically put aside for diversity. So when you find those gaps, you can actually build out your collection. Next slide, please. So the objective of a diversity audit is to really determine the level of diversity within that collection. So is there a wide variety of points of view, experiences, and representations within the collection? Is there a well-balanced collection that can both mirror who you are and provide a window so readers can actually see other points of view? And that's critically important to help us all move the needle to a better place. We need to not only know more about our own culture, but it's really equally, if not more important, to have a good, clear view of other cultures for a deeper understanding. Are there resources available to cultivate and promote inclusivity, wider perspectives, and hashtag own voices? Are you best serving your community along with reflecting the diversity of our world? And earlier in this presentation, I spoke about the need of our own country, but it's even broader than that. It is the world. And, we're all, people in the world, and the world becomes smaller and smaller every year with technology, and the need for understanding world cultures is increasing, year over year. And what percentage of the collection is written in something other than the traditionally dominant voice? And that's an interesting point, right? So whatever that traditional dominant voice is, it's important to get new voices, less heard voices, less promoted voices, right? That's the whole point of building out a diversity collection and doing a diversity audit. Heather, next slide, please. So a library journal survey from 2018 reports that 50% of school libraries have inclusive collection development goals stemming from administration or district level. And that's 2018, again, pre-pandemic and pre-current events, right, regarding, racial literacy needs in the country. So it rises to 68% in urban communities and about 65% of private schools. Again, keeping in mind this was 3 years ago, so it's only more now. A common obstacle to executing a diversity audit is the difficulty of developing a methodology that fits in with already heavy workloads, and we all know this to be true. People are stretched really thin, budgets are really tight. It's not like people have staff and cash just sitting around. We all know that. So that said, there is still a need and a priority for the diversity audit. So, here's just a few tips that we find to be helpful when talking about diversity audit execution. So make it a priority. Tie departmental goals to the project. Develop a simple plan with realistic deadlines and objectives. I mean, as they say, don't try to boil the ocean. Even if you take it step by step and bit by bit, any progress made is totally better than zero progress. And once you start with maybe 10% progress, then you chunk out the next 10%. But really, keeping it simple is really important when you start kicking off a diversity audit. Start with specific areas within the collection. For example, maybe you want to look at young adult titles first, or nonfiction titles first, or African American titles first. Just start with a specific area and start working from there. And this is really important, assign a project lead. Somebody needs to run the project, right? And there are people that will be chomping at the bit for this, because this is a really important initiative, and it's relevant, it's current. And if you get a project lead involved, there'll be accountability, you'll get some reporting, and it will really lead to overall success. Heather, next slide, please. So currently, again, the need for diversity audits are increasing. The number of libraries that are engaging in diversity audits are increasing. We're seeing this all over the place. more and more month over month. Now, what you're looking at in front of you here is an example of a very basic diversity audit table used to record data about, in this particular example, and of course you populate it in whatever way is best for your library or school. But this, shows the gender and ethnicity of the author and the main characters, keeping it real simple. So right here, this is basically an Excel spreadsheet that many libraries are using some form of that, right? So we are seeing more sophisticated tools entering the marketplace recently, and thankfully. So right now you have a few choices. Of course, the Excel spreadsheet, which you can customize. Nina, I see something coming in, but my internet is really not good. So is there a question coming in through chat?
Yeah, I have the question for you. So this is Heather. It's from Jolene. She says, I see diversity is important. I would like to know the names of some publishers or resources to go to in order to find materials to purchase for my library.
Yes, for sure. So can I come to that question in a little bit and just get through this one and then come back to that? Okay, thank you, Jolene, for the question. And yes, great discussion. So I just want to wrap up this slide here regarding the diversity audit. Again, we see some more sophisticated tools coming into the marketplace. Places like Ingram, Baker and Taylor, they are launching more sophisticated programs. The need for diversity audit is only going to increase and become more prevalent, especially when you see big players like Ingram and Baker and Taylor sort of investing in technology, right? We know that this is real and that it is going to move forward. But in the meantime, you can certainly start with, an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so now I'm going to take a pause. Jolene, can you come off mute? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I think okay.
Hi, this is Sue. So you would like to talk about where to find diversity resources, right?
Yes.
Okay, so in a little bit, I'm going to tell you about a couple titles through Omnigraphics that are really important and they may be interesting to you. However, if you work with, your consortium, maybe work with Jeff, and you have great, opportunity to work with some of the large aggregators, for example, or collection development folks in the marketplace, many times you will see build outs of diversity collections. And I would be delighted to talk with you offline to help you more with that. But Omnigraphics can certainly, we have a collection, there are about 6 titles in there, and we can talk about it in a bit. And it's important, I don't want to minimize Omnigraphics, but I also don't want to just focus on Omnigraphics because there are some really good, important titles out there in every genre, from poetry to fiction to young adult to, graphic novels to, what have you. Places like different vendors can help build out diversity collections. So, Jolene, does that help you at all answer the question?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so maybe we can talk offline about which vendors you're currently working with. And as we get deeper into this presentation, you'll see a couple of our titles that may be of interest as well. Okay, Heather, next slide, please. About the best part about concluding a diversity audit, you get new books. So, and this is another thing that we found to be very interesting. So create a test reader committee. And so Jolene, this actually might help you as well. So if you create a test reader committee and you make your committee diverse, right? So student, staff, diverse mix of ages and seniority within your library and different backgrounds. And you can research all types of diverse books. right? All the different genre, adventure, literature, etc. And then compare, you can make it like a fun club committee and compare your test reader notes with your key takeaways. And that way you guys can figure out which books might be most interesting to your school or your library patrons and help your readers understand what it's like for people who don't share their own race, religion, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status, because diverse books teach empathy. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And now we talk about the Omnigraphics Diversity Collection. So Omnigraphics publishes reference content, and one of our collections is the Diversity Collection, which just released in early 2021 in February. And we're very proud of it. It helps students and patrons understand and navigate the world. And here are a few must-have titles to help build out your diversity collection, Jolene. So you can start right here. So the first title I'd like to talk about is Understanding and Navigating Discrimination in America. And again, this is a title that touches on all sorts of discrimination, right? And unfortunately, there are all kinds of discrimination, from racism and ageism and gender discrimination and let's see, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. This book covers off all kinds of discrimination and provides a historical backdrop so you understand, you know, the understanding of how we sort of got into, systemic discrimination in this country. And it also talks about legislation, movements, important things and events that have happened over history along with people. And really important, these books are all written with indices, glossaries, and a section on support groups where you can get more information. The next title, which just released, is called Women in the Workplace in America, 1900 to 2021, a super interesting read, really well done, filled with trailblazing women from 1900 to 2021, some really captivating new stories that may not be, highlighted elsewhere. Everybody's in here from, C.J. Walker to Jane Fonda, to Billie Jean King. It's really packed with a lot of super interesting women, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of course, Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama. It's just packed with really interesting stories in how the movement from the suffragists from the early turn of the century, getting the right to vote, moved into, female Sheryl Sandberg, being at the sea level at Facebook. It's a very interesting read. The next title is Understanding Islam and Muslim Traditions. This is a second edition. This new edition, which is going to be launching in about 2 weeks, actually, includes a really important section on Islamophobia in America. So it hits some sensitive stuff head on. As a result of 9/11, things escalated, and super important that we have a deeper understanding and insight into understanding Islam and Muslim traditions, especially in this country. The next title is a little bit lighter, and it's kind of fun. African American Holidays, Festivals, and Celebrations. It's a popular title that we're very proud of, and we recently published the 6th edition of Holidays Around the World. It's very inclusive, and it's really a great read and a great reference to get some insight on different holidays around different cultures around the world. Heather, next slide, please, about the 2 titles that I just wanted to take a little bit deeper dive in our diversity collection. Again, we're really proud of all of these titles, and Understanding and Navigating Discrimination in America. Really sort of grateful to have Shanti Burns-Simpson, who's the president of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association, say that it's a must-have resource, which was, amazing. We've got Kelvin Watson, who wrote the foreword there, and, he heads up Las Vegas public library system. He came from Broward County. And the other title, Women in the Workplace in America, 1900 to 2021, Ivy Ross, who is very sort of well known. She's a VP of design for hardware products at Google and actually heads up their DEI program at Google, was kind enough to write the foreword and also call this book a trailblazer in its own right. So that was pretty awesome. Heather, next slide, please. And, I don't want to go over this more than needs to be done, but our title, Understanding and Navigating Discrimination, again, very easy to navigate with key links, covers the history of systemic discrimination and the psychology. There's some really interesting information here about the psychology behind racism and its impact on physical, mental, psychological, social well-being, and commonalities across minorities, intersectionality, etc. It explores, and this was also super interesting, different presidential administrations throughout U.S. history, from Abraham Lincoln straight up to Donald Trump, and talks about how their administrations have affected racism. It's just an interesting, again, reference. There's no opinion in these books whatsoever. It's pure fact. And it includes many significant historical events from the Civil Rights Act and the women's suffrage movement, the 9/11 terrorist attacks and Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and far more. So next slide, please, Heather. And then just really quickly wrapping up here with Women in the Workplace in America. Again, historical context. And expands on the dominant narrative that surrounds women's work. And it supports, this is a really great read for anybody interested in career pursuits and programs in women's studies, diversity and inclusion, American history, cultural studies, social sciences. It highlights relevant legislation and movements and cases and amendments. And as I mentioned, we've got some major trailblazers in here. We cover off, there's a lot of data in here and metrics around disparity in pay issues and women in traditionally male roles. There's a lot in here from NASA and the NASA scientific programming back in the 50s and 60s. And it emphasizes the importance of gender equity in the workplace because we still have a ways to go. We're getting better. It's getting better, but we still have a ways to go. And we cover off pioneers, true pioneers in different market sectors and different verticals in the workplace. From engineering to STEM, scientists, legal. Political organizers, politicians, actresses, people like Hedy Lamarr, who was this great Hollywood star who, also basically was doing coding and programming for computing, well before it was popular. So a really interesting read. Next slide, please, Heather. And here I just, I put up a slide with it lists some, key support organizations that you will find in these books. And these are just a few high level to just give you guys an idea of the kinds of support organizations that we have listed. It's very accessible and it's super important for people that, may want to talk about sensitive issues and they don't know who to call. And next slide, please. I love this slide because, and I sort of stole this from the School Library Journal back in 2018. There is a middle school librarian that said, shifting our collection to incorporate diverse books may be the most important thing I've done in my career. I love that. I just think it's super important and very validating. So next slide, please, Heather. Oh, that should do it. That's it. Okay, so any questions or discussion points, or again, like Jeff mentioned, please, feel free to unmute and fire your questions away.
And thank you to everybody who is posting some great information for Jolynn on where to find some diversity titles. That's
Good.
super helpful for people.
Great, excellent. So Jolene, you have access to that through chat, I'm imagining.
Yes.
Sue, we did
Good.
have one more question come in, I think also from Jolynn, about the recommended age or grade levels for some of the books you were recommending. I don't know if there are some of the
Sure.
titles, I think.
Oh, sure. So the Omnigraphics titles are all written at the high school level, at the public library reading level. So we find some of our titles in middle school, a lot of our titles go into high schools and public libraries, and also undergraduate programs for research purposes, especially the discrimination title and the women in the workplace title, the Islam title, certainly are in undergraduate studies as well, but these are all written really at the high school level.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Boy, Jeff, I'm glad this worked out. My internet's still down.
Yeah, we did it.
Well,
you did it.
No, I'm really grateful that it worked out. And Heather, thank you for driving the slides.
Yeah, anytime.
Well, I will add my thanks as well to both of you. Thank you so much for really a great and informative session. I would encourage those listening or live or watching the recording to reach out if you have other questions. If there's more information that you'd like, feel free to reach out to us here at WiLS, or you can see Sue's contact information is here on the slide as well. Any final thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up for the day, Heather or Sue?
No, I really just want to thank everybody for taking a chunk out of your day. I know people are really busy, and I'm really very appreciative of you guys taking the time to dial in and to log in and to listen to a talk on diversity and building out diversity collections. It's a really important topic, and I feel really grateful that I have the opportunity to really discuss these things. So thanks everybody for joining. Truly appreciated.
Well, we think it's incredibly important too. That's why we're so thrilled to be able to provide this session today. So thanks again to everyone for attending. Thanks to those who are listening to the recording. And once again, thank you so much to Sue and of course to Heather for helping to get this presentation to you. Those watching, please do keep your eyes peeled. Watch the same channels for announcements of other future sessions. And again, please feel free to reach out to us with any questions or information that we can provide.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.